Hey everyone, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the bell so you don't miss any new stories. Let's get started. I woke up to silence. Not the kind that's peaceful, the kind that makes your skin tighten. There was no alarm, no traffic hum, no coffee pot gurgling in the kitchen. Just a thick, sticky stillness, like sound itself had been sucked out of the room. I lay there listening. Nothing. No movement, no voices, just empty space. By now, Hannah would normally be up. I'd hear her in the kitchen, humming to herself, jazz from some old record echoing faintly. The coffee machine would hiss to life. She drank it with a pinch of sea salt, something poetic she never quite explained. Said it was part of her morning ritual. That's how the day learns to listen to you, she used to say. But this morning, no sound, no Hannah. I turned over. The other side of the bed was empty. Not just empty, pristine. The sheets perfectly smooth, the pillow untouched. I ran my hand across the mattress. Cold, like ceramic. The clock read 7:42. She always kissed me before she left, light on the temple, barely there. And she always said the same thing. Wake up, Evan. You've slept through your boring life again. It was our private joke. Old, familiar, comforting. But this morning, nothing. I called her name. First gently, then louder. 3 times. No answer. I got up, walked through the house. The kitchen was spotless. Every cup in place. The coffee machine silent. No phone charging. No phone at all. No keys. The bathroom was dry. Her toiletries lined up like soldiers. Closet untouched. Everything in order. But too much order. Like a showroom. Like she'd never been there. Back in the bedroom, I grabbed my phone and texted her. 1 check mark. Not delivered, I called. Straight to voicemail. She could have stepped out. A walk, groceries, left her phone at home. Maybe she needed air. I said that to myself like a script I was supposed to believe. But my gut didn't buy a word of it. Hannah wasn't someone who vanished without a trace. She would have left a note, a line, anything. Out. Be back soon. But not like this. Not a clean break from everything. I called the clinic. They hadn't seen her. Texted a few of her friends. Nothing. Even her mother said she hadn't heard from Hannah since the night before. That's when it started. A spreading crack inside me. Like thin glass under pressure. I called the police. Name? Evan Reed. Age? 35. Occupation? Psychotherapist. Private practice. 2 offices, Boston and Newton. When did you last see your wife? Last night. Dinner at home. She looked tired. New patient, first session. We watched a show. I read a bit. Nothing unusual. Any arguments? Number? Not really, hardly ever. Was there anything strange in her behavior? Anything worrying? She seemed distracted, quieter than usual. Said it had been a rough day. I figured she was tired. Happens. Do you know the name of the patient? Owen. I think his name was Owen Harper. After they were done, I stepped outside and sat in the car. My hands were shaking. I couldn't feel my fingertips, like my body had pulled inward, curling up, trying to disappear. I watched people go by, strangers, coffee in hand, headphones in, some laughing, some rushing. None of them knew my life had just fractured. I kept thinking, I missed something, something obvious, right in front of me. I replayed the night before. She sat across from me, glass of wine in hand, eyes on the screen. She looked calm. Too calm, but just before bed, there'd been a look, quick, fleeting. At the time, I ignored it. Now I couldn't stop seeing it. In that glance, there was goodbye. I didn't go home. I thought I could, but I couldn't. Not to an empty house where silence clings to your skin and every corner echoes with memories of her. So I wandered the streets like a ghost. No destination, no plan. Just walking, trying to breathe, trying to think. What did I miss? I knew Hannah better than anyone. We'd been together for almost 7 years. I'd seen her at her best and worst. Joy, fear, anger, indifference. I knew the little ways she lied, the subtle shifts in her tone. And most importantly, I knew she could hardly ever lie. But now she was hiding something. I could feel it. I stopped at a small cafe, bought a black coffee and sat by the window. My hands moved on autopilot, scrolling through emails, work stuff, reminders, a couple of spam messages. I was about to put the phone down when one name jumped out at me. A name I hadn't seen in years. Lucy Miller. The name hit me like a paper cut on the heart. I didn't open the email right away. I just stared at it. The subject line, "Are you still alive?" Not hello. Not long time no talk. Oh no, just, "Are you still alive?" I clicked on it. The message was short. "Evan, I saw Hannah yesterday. I think she's in danger. We shouldn't be in touch anymore, I know. But this is important. Call me. Lucy." I exhaled sharply, leaning back in my chair. Lucy, the woman I'd loved before Hannah, the one we had both left behind in a way so brutal, neither of us made the effort to reach out again. It ended, messily and permanently. I thought she had moved on. Portland, I think. Maybe farther. And yet here she was, reaching out to me about my wife's disappearance. I saw Hannah yesterday. Where? How? Why was she even in the same city? And what did she mean, in danger? I dialed her number. Lucy? Hi, Evan. You saw Hannah? Yes. Where? That's not the first question you should be asking. Don't drag it out. Where did you see her? In Brooklyn, on Willow Street. She was standing in front of a house, in a black coat, her hair up. At first I thought I was mistaken, but it was her. I wanted to approach, but then she saw me and ran away. That's impossible. We live in Boston. What was she doing in Brooklyn? I don't know, but Evan, the look on her face. She looked terrified, like someone was following her, like she was being hunted. Do you understand? Are you sure it was Hannah? Absolutely, a chill ran down my spine. Hannah in Brooklyn? Without her phone? Without her car? Without any explanation? What was she doing on that street? Listen, Lucy said, breaking through my spiraling thoughts. I know you don't want me digging into your life after everything, but it looked like she was standing in front of a house, the one we looked at together. Do you remember? I froze. I remembered. That house. The one we had fallen in love with, before everything went wrong, before I met Hannah. I hadn't thought about that house in years. We'd walked through it together, imagining our future. Then life had pulled us in different directions, and that dream had crumbled. But now, Hannah was standing in front of it. What was she looking for there? And more importantly, who was she hiding from? My head was buzzing. I walked through the parking lot, not even remembering where I had left the car. The world had become soft and sticky, like everything happening wasn't real, but seen through a pane of glass. Or maybe a drug. People walked by, cars drove past, but I couldn't hear the noise, not even my own footsteps. Only the pulse in my temples. Only Lucy's voice, spinning endlessly in my head. She looked like someone was looking for her. I found my car, got in, and closed my eyes. Hannah had been in Brooklyn. Why? Why buy a house tied to my past? And how had she even known about that house? I'd never told her about Lucy. Never. That part of my life was buried deep, locked away, and never touched. We didn't hide skeletons in the closet, but everyone had their own. Mine were nameless, quiet, and buried. Or so I thought. I started the car, drove a few blocks, and then stopped by the side of the road. My heart was pounding too fast. A psychotherapist, a man who spent years helping others breathe, yet now suffocating in his own car. I looked at my hands. My palms were shaking. My left index finger twitched. An old tremor I thought I'd beaten. Too many coincidences. Too many gaps. Hannah's disappearance. The unanswered call. Lucy. That house. I knew if I wanted to find my wife, I would have to dive into the past. Into the one I hadn't touched in a long time. The one I was afraid to touch. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Max, it's Evan. I need you to dig something up. Listening. You sound like you're in deep shit. I want the address of a house. Brooklyn, Willow Street, 238. I need to know who lives there now. Who owned it before? The full story. Deadline? Now. No hello as usual. Sorry, it's important. All right, 2 hours. I'll get back to you. Max had been my college roommate. Now he's a private investigator. Wears suits, drinks bourbon too strong, plays the cynic, but damn, he knows how to find information. I drove home. The house greeted me with silence. Closed, tight, dusty. A newspaper from the previous day was lying at the entrance. Next to it, one of Hannah's earrings. Strange. She almost never lost jewelry. Even cheap costume pieces she treated like memories. I picked it up. A tiny gold ball. Warm, as though it still held the warmth of her skin. I stepped inside, walking through the rooms more carefully. Slowly, like a stranger entering someone else's house. Something had changed. One of the books on the shelf was out of place. Hannah never took books from my office. Never. She always said my work was too dark to touch on the weekends. I pulled the book out. It was a collection of notes on working with post-traumatic stress disorder. I opened it and froze. Between the pages was a folded piece of paper. Neatly folded. It was Hannah's handwriting, even with slightly slanted letters. Evan, if you're reading this, it means things really went wrong. I can't explain anything yet. You shouldn't look for me. It's dangerous for you and for those around you. Just remember our lighthouse. It's still burning. I read it several times. The lighthouse? My heart started pounding faster. We often use the lighthouse as a metaphor, a point of return, but we never defined it literally. Just once, 5 years ago, we were in Maine and saw an old lighthouse perched on the rocky shore. That's when Hannah said, "If I ever have to disappear, I'd want you to find me there." We'd both laugh then. Just a word game? Or was it? I pulled out my phone. Max had written back. The house on Willow Street, 238. Current owner, Jeremy W. Hart. Bought 3 years ago. The house previously belonged to a woman named Sarah Becker. Lucy's name doesn't appear in the records. But here's the interesting part. 2 years ago, a patient was registered at a psychiatric clinic. Name, Owen Harper. Yes, the same one. Coincidence? Owen Harper. The name Hannah had mentioned the night before she disappeared. A chain clicked into place in my head. Hannah, Brooklyn, Lucy, the house, the patient. This wasn't just coincidence. It was a web, and I was standing in the center of it. I sat in my office, but it felt like I was underwater. Everything around me was too quiet, too slow, too heavy. I stared at Hannah's note, which now felt less like an abstract metaphor and more like a cry, a whisper worn into the paper. Just remember our lighthouse, it still burns. 5 years ago, I didn't just listen to her words. I remembered them. The cold wind, the gray sea, as if it had forgotten the warmth of the sun. The lighthouse standing alone on a cliff, abandoned but still burning. Hannah had said, "This light, even if it flashes once every 100 years, still saves someone's life." Maybe that's where I needed to begin. But there was another path, closer, darker, and more dangerous. Owen Harper, a patient, a shadow, a connection. The man Hannah mentioned once, almost carelessly, but now he had resurfaced. Max sent me another message. Found a photo of Owen Harper. Sending it. Be careful, man. This guy, weird. I opened the picture. My heart skipped a beat. The man in the photo was gaunt, with unnaturally long fingers and deeply set eyes. He didn't look at the camera. He looked through it. No malice in his expression, no tension in his face. Only one thing, an absolute absence of emotion. He was like an empty shell, or like someone else was living in him. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I typed his name into a professional licensed database. Nothing. I searched the medical registries, found a snippet from a clinic report. Name, Owen Harper, age, 34. Diagnosis, paranoia with dissociative disorder symptoms, hallucination episodes. Observation, 2021 to 2023, released upon personal request. They let him go. A man who was essentially unstable. I sifted through pages of notes. The doctor's observations were strange, superficial, almost as if they were in a hurry to discharge him. And then it hit me. Why did Hannah take him on? She was always cautious, especially with men prone to aggression. I'd argued with her about it once. I thought some patients should just be handed off to someone else. She told me, if no one takes on the difficult cases, then no one will save them. Sometimes I admired that. Sometimes I feared for her. I found the address of the clinic, Sandbrook Center, a small private facility just outside the city. I booked an appointment, posing as a researcher working on a dissertation about the boundaries of clinical psychiatry and private therapy. Was it stupid? Probably, but I didn't know how else to get in. Now I sat in their waiting room. The air was thick with the smell of old furniture and cheap lavender air freshener. The wait stretched on, seeming like an eternity. The walls were adorned with patients' artwork, blurry faces, swirling shapes, and one drawing that was strangely upside down, a figure without eyes. The secretary, a woman in her 50s, gave me a wary look. "You're writing a book?" "Yes, on borderline cases, a collection of stories, with the patient's and doctor's consent, of course." She scribbled something down in her notebook. "We don't give interviews, especially not to outsiders. I just need one case, Owen Harper's case. I know he was under your observation." Her eyes lifted slowly, studying me. "Who are you, really?" I froze, took a slow breath. "Tell the truth, or leave empty-handed." "I'm Evan Reed, a psychotherapist. Hannah Reed, my wife. She's been missing for 2 days. The last I know, she was meeting with Owen." Silence. She stood up slowly, leaving without a word. 10 minutes later, she returned, her eyes filled with either fear or exhaustion. "I can't tell you anything, and you shouldn't dig any further." "Why?" "Because he's one of those people who doesn't leave your head." "Did he threaten anyone?" "Number." He spoke calmly. But it was hard to be around him. It was like he pulled parts of you out. Words, emotions. After his visits, sometimes the lights in the hallway would flicker, and no one knew why. He never touched anyone, but people were always relieved when he left. "And where did he go?" She hesitated. "I don't know. He didn't leave an address. He just disappeared. He might be with my wife, or following her." She looked me straight in the eye. "Then you have very serious problems, Mr. Reed." I stepped out onto the street. The air was thick with the smell of rain. I got into my car and tried to start it. The key turned with difficulty. Inside, the car was cold, like a freezer. I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. On the back seat was something small, a paper boat, the kind kids make from notebook pages. I turned around sharply, nothing, just the paper boat. I picked it up, unfolded it. Inside was a message, scrawled in rough black marker. "The lighthouse flashes for all, but not everyone wants to see the light." I held the paper boat in my hands, light like a child's toy, yet heavy like a threat. The marker had bled along the creases as if the writer had rushed, scribbling in poor light. The words, "The lighthouse flashes for all, but not everyone wants to see the light." Unusual words, almost philosophical, almost a threat. I tried to make sense of it. How did it end up in my car? I was sure I locked it. Or was I? I stepped out and checked the locks. Everything was intact. No signs of forced entry, no damage. Nobody had been around, just a regular parking spot near the clinic. So someone must have opened it with a key? Or was I just starting to get paranoid? If it's Owen, he leaves traces, on purpose. It's like a game to him. I tucked the boat into the glove compartment. The car started and I drove home, slowly, carefully, watching the mirrors. Every pedestrian, every cyclist seemed suspicious. I kept feeling like someone was trailing me, but no car, no noise, just a sense that someone was following, mirroring my movements. I turned onto a side street, sharp, not planned, another block, another turn. Nobody followed, empty, just me. Paranoia is contagious. I had told that to my patients more times than I could count, and now I was living it. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. A habit. If you're being watched, don't give them a silhouette. Don't give them a routine. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed my laptop, and began scanning through Hannah's old emails. Her inbox, shared calendar, and notes. Her correspondence was unnervingly clean. Too clean. As if she hadn't written anyone in weeks. No friends, no family, not even her students. She'd been teaching an online psychology course at the university. The last exchange, an email from someone named J.H. 2 weeks ago. The subject line was blank. J.H. You don't have to go there alone. He can be unpredictable. If you feel anything, leave. I'll be nearby. He doesn't forget those who look him in the eye. Be careful. I read it again. And again. Owen, was this about him? Who was J.H.? And that line, he doesn't forget those who look him in the eye. A chill ran down my spine. I copied the email address and started searching. A pseudonym? A fake email? Number I found a profile, academic, Julia Hope, an assistant at the same university Hannah worked at, a psychiatrist specializing in severe cases. I called her. No warning, no text. Rings. Silence. Hello? Julia. This is Evan Reed, Hannah Reed's husband. Oh God, Evan, I didn't expect this. Sorry for the direct approach, but I need to know, who were you writing to in the email to Hannah? Is it about someone named Owen Harper? Silence. Do you know that she's missing? Yes. I've already spoken with the police. I told them I saw her at the university 3 days ago. She looked distracted, scared, and yes, this was Owen. Do you know where he is? Number. He disappeared. He was in our closed webinars under a fake name. Hannah recognized him. At first she thought she was mistaken, but he wrote to her on her personal email, not as a patient, as an observer. He knew too much about her. Did you know she was planning to meet with him? Number. And if I had known, I would have done everything to stop it. I fell silent. What do you really know about him? She exhaled heavily. He's very smart. In his own way, he plays on details. He can get into your head without saying a word. At first, we thought he had schizophrenia, but then we realized he just watches people too closely and for too long. What do you mean? Have you ever felt like someone was reading you without asking a single question? I went silent. He did that. He knew exactly which words to throw to make you doubt yourself, which glance would break your confidence. He's not a patient. He's a predator, Evan. Very subtle, very quiet, and I think he chose Hannah for a reason. Why? Because she tried to understand him, and he understood her, and he understood her. It became hard to breathe. Suddenly, I didn't know who was safe anymore. More importantly, if any of us were still alive. Julia continued, "There's one more thing. He wrote to me a week ago, just one email. The words, 'Now you know what it's like not to come home.'" I hung up, just ended the call. I couldn't listen anymore. I glanced again at Hannah's note, then at the photo of the lighthouse on my phone. Suddenly it hit me. I wouldn't be able to sleep. Not tonight, not tomorrow, because if I don't move forward, he'll come for me. And if I do move, I might just reach Hannah before he finishes his game. I pulled out a map of Maine, found it, the lighthouse, the very one. Shoreline Lighthouse, York County, abandoned, no security, no tourists. I left in the night. The road to Maine was black, not because of the time of day, but because it seemed to absorb the light. The asphalt swallowed the headlights, and the shoulders of the road were engulfed by a silent forest. The navigator lost its signal, as if this place didn't want to be found. I drove the last 50 miles blindly, relying on an old map that Hannah had printed out for a trip that never happened. In the upper right corner of the map was a blue cross, with a handwritten note above it. "If everything gets too loud, go there." Loud? Was she talking about thoughts or voices? The closer I got to the lighthouse, the more I felt time stretching. The car clock read 3:17. 5 minutes later, it showed 3:16. I stopped the car and got out. The air smelled of salt, wet metal, and something old. The scent was like that of an abandoned school, where books and chalkboards remain, but there are no people. It was so quiet that I could hear my own breath, as if it were the loudest thing in the world. The lighthouse stood ahead, dark, a silhouette against the murky night sky. The light wasn't on. I approached. The door was ajar, no creaking, no wind. I entered. Inside there was a spiral staircase, narrow with rusty railings. The walls were covered with inscriptions. Not by tourists, not by pranksters. These were phrases, repeated, manuscripts. He is watching. Where are your eyes? The lighthouse looks inside. You knew but didn't believe. The light does not save. The light calls. I slowly walked up. Each step rang in my ears like a strike on metal. When I reached the top, I saw it. A note. The second one. It lay on the floor, pinned down by a rock. I bent down. The paper was the same thickness as the first one, but this one had water stains. The handwriting was neat, feminine. He knows you'll come. He knew from the beginning. This is not the beginning. This is the third attempt. Remember, the staircase doesn't lead up, only inside. Go deeper. I felt a tightness in my chest, as if I were a pawn in someone else's game. But who was writing? Hannah, or someone pretending to be her? I turned around. The lighthouse window faced the sea, and there in the distance, in the cold, moonless sky, I saw a figure, on the rocks, right by the water. The figure stood still, thin, cloaked. I rushed out of the lighthouse and ran down. Stumbled, almost fell. I reached the shore. No one. I approached the spot. The rocks were dry, but on one there was another piece of paper, rolled up like a message in a bottle. I unrolled it. This time the handwriting was male, uneven. Look more carefully. She didn't leave you a path. She left you a mirror, and you don't want to look into it. Panic washed over me. I couldn't stay there any longer. Every part of me screamed to leave. I returned to the car, started the engine, but didn't drive away immediately. I sat there gripping the steering wheel. What if I had missed something? I glanced at the rearview mirror. In the back seat, no one. But there was something else. A photograph. Old, yellowed. It showed the lighthouse. Two people stood next to it. A woman with long hair. A man. Their faces were partially blurred. But I knew her. It was Hannah. The man stood beside her, his face shaded by a hood. But something about his posture, it was familiar. And then I realized I had seen this figure before. Not once. In the old photo with Hannah, in the notes. Even in a childhood drawing she once showed me, with the caption, Mom and the strange man by the sea. We laughed then. Now I wasn't laughing. What if this Owen is not just a man, or not entirely a man? What if he's been around much longer than we thought? I returned to the hotel by morning, a cheap place near the highway, with fluorescent lamps buzzing like mosquitoes near my ear. The bed smelled like plastic and detergent. The TV didn't work. I didn't even bother trying to turn it on. I lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. In my head, the image of the lighthouse, the note, the figure by the water, the photograph. I stared at it for a long time under the desk lamp. And at some point, I noticed something. On the back of the photo, a faint, barely legible pencil inscription. Summer 1997, York, August 14th. Hollow Ridge. Hannah was 9 years old then. York, that was a coastal town. But Hollow Ridge. I Googled it. It was an old rehabilitation center for children with behavioral disorders. Closed in 2009. It was private. And as it turned out, it had been associated with several unofficial complaints. Leaks to the press, parent forums, but nothing official. It was as if everything had been wiped away. I called Julia. It was almost 7 a.m. Evan, is everything okay? Have you ever heard of Hollow Ridge? A pause. Yes, how did you find out about it? A photograph with a caption. Hannah was there. She was sent there when she was 9, for a few months. Then her mother took her away without explaining why. The only thing in the file was a diagnosis: emotional breakdown after the loss of her father. She never told me. She avoided talking about it, even in therapy. And I didn't press her. Sometimes patients need time. But now it matters. I agree. I sat quietly. Evan, Julia's voice was softer now. There's something else. One of the supervisors at the center was a man named Harper. His full name is Owen James Harper. He was a former child psychologist. Lost his license after a complaint. No criminal case, but he disappeared shortly after the center closed. I felt the ground slipping out from under me. It can't be a coincidence, I said. Number, it can't. Everything points to him being there, with her, at that age, that he was with her long before he became your patient. So, he came back to her after 20 years? Or he never left? That thought hit me harder than I expected, because I was starting to understand. Hannah was probably trying to return to the roots of her trauma, not just dealing with a patient. She was looking for the root cause. Maybe she wanted to expose something, or someone. I opened the photo again, took a magnifying glass. Next to Owen's figure, there was a symbol, like an emblem. I hadn't noticed it before. A simple shape, a circle crossed by two intersecting lines, as if an eye divided diagonally. I began searching, and I stumbled upon a mention in an old archive. A forum for survivors of private boarding schools had a section on symbology, where they discussed the marks used by real and false mentors. This symbol was called the eye without a gaze, a mark for isolated children, allegedly meant for special procedures. Of course, there was no proof, only rumors. But those rumors were now the only thing I trusted more than anything I had ever known. I realized then I'd have to return to York, to Hollow Ridge, find its building, find anything. If I was lucky, I'd find him, or at least what was left of him. But what I didn't know yet was that there was a room in the archives of that school that hadn't been registered on any of the plans, and it was there that someone was already waiting for me. York greeted me not with sunlight, but with mist. Everything in this morning seemed unresolved, as if the night had simply changed shape. I drove along country roads, passing crooked barns, overgrown gas stations, and rare signs, one of which was diagonally crossed out, as if someone didn't want me to know where I was going. I already knew where Hollow Ridge was. An old forum coordinator, from where I read about the symbol, had sent me the address. A former boarding school 3 miles off the main highway. It had been closed since 2009, officially due to fire safety violations. When I turned off the road, the first thing that struck me was the silence. Not just the absence of sound, a muffled silence, as if the very earth here was afraid to speak. The road turned into gravel, then into mud. The trees grew thicker, the light more scarce. And then I saw the building, old, dark, covered in ivy, with a crumbling facade and the words Hollow Ridge Institute. The letters worn away by rain, like erased memory. Most of the windows were shattered. The door was ajar. And yet, the building didn't feel completely dead. It felt like it was watching. I grabbed a flashlight and went inside. First, a corridor with peeling paint, then a staircase. My steps echoed hollowly, as if not on the floor but through someone else's mind. On the walls, children's drawings, almost entirely erased. Rainbows, stick figures, strange shapes. Some eyes in the drawings had been crossed out. There was dust on the floor, but in places there were tracks, old but clear. Someone had walked here recently. I moved on. A wing-marked therapeutic block. It was colder here. It smelled of mildew and metal. The doors to the rooms opened with difficulty. In one, a metal bed, bent. In another, a board with names. On one line, H. Smith. My heart skipped a beat. Hannah Smith. Before she took my last name. Before she became Reed. It all made sense now. On the floor, a notebook. I picked it up. The pages were written in a child's handwriting. Words were often repeated. I am good. I see dreams, but I can't tell. He said I'm special. The eye watches. Don't look back. If he finds out, I'll disappear. The handwritten pages ended abruptly on one, where, above the words, a spiral was drawn. A neat one, almost hypnotic. I closed the notebook, exhaled. My ears were ringing. And then I saw a door. Wooden, almost blending into the wall. No number, no handle, but with the same symbol. The I crossed out. I pushed. It didn't open. Searching my pocket, I pulled out a lockpick, a leftover from the time I helped a guy escape a cult who had taught me a few tricks. A minute later, the door opened. The room was empty. Almost bare walls, stale air, but on the floor, a circle of chairs. Children's chairs, small. In the center, a broken mirror, and on the wall, a phrase written in paint. Speak only in the mirror. Look, not at the reflection, but at the self. I stood in that room feeling the walls press in. The flashlight trembled in my hand. And then, a sound, a faint click. I turned around. No one. But in the mirror, a flash. As if someone had darted behind me. I quickly turned around. Silence. I approached the mirror closer, peered into the cracks. And there, between the lines, I saw a face. Mine. But the eyes weren't mine. Strange. Dark. Deeper than they should be. As if I wasn't me. I stepped back, dropped the flashlight. The light bounced off the walls. Something fell behind the door. I rushed to the exit, empty. But on the door now hung an envelope, stuck with blue duct tape. I ripped it off, opened it. You were closer than you thought. You are not the savior. You are the last variable. Signature. H. Hannah? Her handwriting, no doubt. But why am I the variable? Who wrote this? And most importantly, when? If she was here, then she could still be nearby. Or maybe it's not her anymore. Maybe it's not. When I left Hollow Ridge, the sky over York was gray, as if not only the sun but time itself no longer wanted to shine. I got into the car and just drove. I didn't think. I didn't feel. I just held the wheel. There was this sensation in my chest, like I had taken something with me from there. Not physically, but as if the room without a name had settled inside me, becoming another room in my mind. The words from the note wouldn't leave me. You are the last variable. What did it mean? Why the last? Who was first? And who wrote it? Was it Hannah? I remembered her face, beside me in bed, in the morning light. The warmth of her skin, her smile. But now there was something off in those memories, a foreign shadow, as if I were recalling a scene from a movie, not from life. At a gas station, I bought coffee, opened my laptop, caught a weak Wi-Fi signal, and started searching everything I could find about Hannah in Hollow Ridge. And I stumbled upon a forum I hadn't seen before. The moderator's name was Silent Eye 98. He had only 5 posts, all in a single thread, titled, "We Saw Him Too. We Were Also Chosen." Each post was a scream. If you remember the spiral, don't look at the center. He doesn't breathe. He stands, but you'll feel it when he looks at you. We were taught to be silent. Those who spoke disappeared. The room without a name wasn't the only one. I saw the therapist who knew. He didn't return. The last line. I read it 3 times. The therapist who knew. He didn't return. Could this be about me? Or, am I not the first? Am I the repeat? I returned to the hotel. The curtains were drawn, but the room was cold. In the mirror, my reflection, but with some shadow behind me. I turned around. No one. The phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Silence. Then, breathing, and a whisper. A woman's voice. You don't think this was all about her, do you? I froze. Who is this? Silence. Then, a click. I called back. Unavailable. I sat on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding in my throat. My ears were ringing. In my stomach. Fear, like an icy film. I opened my laptop, checked the cameras. I had one in my apartment, another in my office, just in case. But now, I wanted to check. Office. Empty. Apartment. I looked at the corner of the room where Hannah's chair used to be, and someone was sitting in it, not moving, a face in the shadow, a woman. She was staring directly at the camera, unblinking, and for a moment, I thought it was Hannah, but her gaze was empty, not hers, not human. I shut the laptop. I couldn't breathe. I turned it on again. The camera, off, signal error. I didn't know if my mind was breaking or if I was finally starting to see what had been hiding all this time. The phone blinked, an SMS. You've been close to him from the very beginning. You are not the observer. You are the participant. Remember the first time? The first time? What does the first time mean? I left the room, walked down the hotel corridor, holding the key with trembling fingers, and then I noticed one of the doors at the end of the hall was slightly open. The light inside was on. I stopped, approached, peered inside, and froze. Inside, a chair. On it, a man in a cloak, his face covered. He sat still, but the feeling from him was such that it seemed he was watching, not with eyes, but with something else. He didn't speak, but I knew it was him. Owen, or the one Hannah called the observer. I took a step back, and in that moment he whispered, "You were there too." In 1997, I recoiled, slammed the door shut. My heart was pounding. This can't be happening. But why don't I remember 1997? Why is my first clear childhood memory only from school? Why had I never wondered where I was before I turned 10? I stood in the hallway trying not to collapse. In my mind, a voice. You are not the savior. You are part of the equation. Sleep never came. I sat in the chair by the window, staring out at the fog-draped parking lot, as though the world outside existed only halfway, like an unfinished set. I tried to gather myself, my memories, my thoughts, even my sensations, into something whole, but everything kept falling apart. The words spoken by the man behind the door. You were there too, in 1997, settled in my mind like a virus, simple but deadly. I tried to trace back my life, to remember where I had been that year. I should have been a child, 6 years old, but I couldn't remember. Not in detail. Usually when you recall childhood, it comes through feelings, a smell, a light, an anxiety or joy, the voice of a mother, the sound of rain outside the window. But for me, emptiness. Only learned facts. I grew up in Boston. My mother died from a stroke. My father left. My grandmother raised me. But all of it felt paper thin, like a poorly written biography. I opened my old case with documents, the one I've been carrying with me since my internship. Licenses, diplomas, old insurance papers, reports. And there, among all of it, I suddenly saw a photo. Old, black and white. A boy, about 6 years old, in a white shirt, next to a tree. On the back, a note, Summer 1997, Hollow Ridge. I was struck. That was me. The same boy. Recognizable. My scar above the eyebrow, ears slightly pressed to my head, a wary look. I sat there for about 10 minutes, motionless, a coldness in my chest. How did this photo end up with me? Why had I never noticed it before? And if I had been at Hollow Ridge, then I could have known Hannah. We might have been there at the same time. I remembered how, in first grade, I once heard the name Hannah Smith and felt something strange, inexplicable, like someone had run their finger down my spine. But back then, I didn't think much of it. What if all this time I had been carrying not just memories, but forgetfulness as well? I found Julia's number, called her. Evan, are you okay? Number, listen, I need you to tell me the whole truth. Everything you know. A pause, a held breath. What are you talking about? I was there, at Hollow Ridge. I found a photo, with a caption, my photo. Why did you never tell me about it? Evan, her voice changed, slow, cautious. I didn't know you'd find it. What? When you came to me for the first time, you said you had fragmented memories. You thought everything was fine, just stress, ordinary gaps. But, Julia, what were you hiding? I couldn't talk earlier. You weren't ready. Tell me. She was silent. I only heard her breathing. Hannah came to me shortly before she disappeared. She said that you two might have known each other before, that you shared the same images in your dreams. Mirrors, a room, a faceless figure. She believed your memories had been wiped too, that you hadn't met by chance. I didn't know how to breathe. The walls of the hotel seemed to close in, constrict. You knew this whole time, but you stayed silent? I wanted to protect you. You, you were unstable. And when Owen Harper appeared, I realized you were involved much deeper than you understood. I clenched the phone. I was part of an experiment? I don't know, but Hannah believed you both were chosen, and that, unlike her, you didn't forget on your own. Someone helped you forget. I had to get out. I had to breathe. I walked down the street. The rain started. Small, almost invisible. At the bus stop stood a woman in a coat. I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't felt her gaze. I turned around. She was staring directly at me. Her face, hidden, only her lips, slightly curved in a half smile. I kept walking. A block later, again, on the other side of the street. Was it the same woman? I quickened my pace, and suddenly, a click. In the shop window, a reflection. Behind me, her. Closer now. I turned around. No one. Only a note pinned to the lamppost with a button. Remember faster, or you will forget yourself forever. We've already tried. It's on you. This is the third cycle. The third cycle. What if I really had gone through this before? What if I'm not searching for Hannah, but I've been searching for myself all along? And Hannah isn't a victim, but the one who stayed to remember? Maybe the only one. When I returned to the hotel, a man I had never seen before was sitting at the front desk. He was polite, composed, his uniform perfectly pressed, and his nameless badge bore only the hotel chain logo. But there was something unnervingly calm in his eyes. "Good evening, Mr. Cross," he said, his voice smooth and detached. "You have a message." He handed me an envelope. Black, no markings, thick paper, slightly rough, as if it had aged beyond its time. "Who left it?" I asked. "They asked not to say, but they said you'd understand when you open it." I went up to my room, closed the door behind me. My heart beat slowly, softly, like a bell submerged underwater. I sat on the bed, staring at the envelope for a long time, as if its contents might reveal something terrible about myself I wasn't ready to see. Finally, I opened it. Inside was just one sentence, handwritten. "Room 207. Don't forget the light." Nothing more. I looked at the floor number. I was on the 5th floor. But I remembered that the elevator only went up to the 6th. There was no 7th. Or was there? I stepped into the hallway staring at the elevator panel. The 7 button was now there, lit up. I distinctly remembered that it hadn't been there before, yesterday or the day before. I even complained to the administrator about the elevator not going higher than the 6th. But now, it was there. I pressed it. The elevator moved slowly, its hum almost imperceptible, as if it were traveling through viscous matter. The light inside flickered. Something tightened in me, like a coil winding tighter and tighter. Ding, 7th floor. The doors opened, and I immediately realized that I had not simply reached the top floor. This was an entirely different hotel. The floor was old, wooden, a worn carpet with a spiral pattern underfoot. The walls were peeling, and the dim light of incandescent bulbs barely illuminated the space. It smelled of dust, cigarettes, and something metallic. I took a step forward. The silence was thick, like everything here was suspended in a vacuum. Room 207 was at the very end of the long, dark corridor. Each door had a plaque, but only room 207 stood open. I walked in. Inside, it was an ordinary room. A bed, a table, a chair, a wardrobe. But everything seemed unnaturally neat, as if it were frozen in time, like a photograph. Yet it also felt like a set, as if the space didn't breathe. I went to the switch and turned on the light. The lamp flickered but lit up. And at that exact moment, an old rotary phone on the nightstand began to ring. I slowly picked up the receiver. Evan? A voice, female, tired, hoarse. Do you hear me? Hannah. Don't say it aloud. Don't say it. They hear names. Where are you? Where have you been? I tried to get out, but you need to understand. You're already here. You've never left. What does that mean? I don't remember. Because you weren't supposed to remember. It's part of the agreement. You agreed to this voluntarily, but then you changed your mind. You were re-recorded. Who are they? Look at the mirror. Now. I turned. An oval mirror hung on the wall. And behind me was a figure. A man. In a cloak. His face hidden. But he was moving even though there was no one else in the room. I turned around. Nothing. In the mirror, he was there again. Closer. Almost right next to me. I recoiled. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. The light began to flicker. I rushed to the door, but it had disappeared. In its place, only a white wall. The room began to change. It was as if the walls started to breathe, pulsating. A low, continuous hum filled the air, vibrating like the sound of low-frequency waves. The atmosphere became thick like water. I felt something getting closer. And then I heard a voice from within myself. You came here to remember, but now they'll show you who you are. Before me appeared a door, narrow, rough, a sign attached, archive, subject 34C, profile cross Evan, attempt 3, success 18%. I stood paralyzed. Subject, attempt 3, success 18%. This was not just a hotel. This was a place where consciousness is rewritten, where people become observers, or participants, or disappear. And I had already been here at least twice. When the door disappeared, something inside me collapsed. Not just fear, not panic. It was the loss of something fundamental, something essential, as if what had been taken wasn't a memory, but me, the core, the thread that tied my mind together. I pressed my back to the cold wall, staring into the space where room 207 had been. Empty now, or maybe it always was. The corridor stretched ahead, colorless and silent. My footsteps echoed, hollow, too loud. A voice, from the basement, or inside my skull. I couldn't tell. You can't get out of here. It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like belief, like a fact, a sentence. I clenched my fists and kept walking. The fear was sharp, clear, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Room 207 was gone, but I still felt its breath. I pulled out my phone. There was a message from Julia. Old, so old it felt fossilized, like it had traveled through time rather than data lines. You were there in 1997 in another time. You don't remember, but that doesn't mean you weren't there. You will face it again. You are not alone. I read it twice, 3 times. She was talking about time, what happened in 1997. Why does it all feel like a hole in my mind? And then something shifted. The walls began to move, but not like a dream. They began to breathe. I froze. Darkness stirred. The room was shrinking, folding in. The air thickened like syrup in my lungs. Something was there. Not a person. Him, the cloaked figure, moving toward me. I ran to the door. Gone. Only walls. My head spun and my legs buckled. I collapsed. The floor hit me softly like falling into fog. When I looked up, there he was, standing in the corridor, motionless, like a statue. Closer now. My mouth wouldn't work. My body wouldn't move. I was locked inside myself. He didn't move. He waited. And then he tilted his head, slightly, almost curiously. You've returned, he said. His voice was low, vast, like it came from below the earth. You're here again. This is your path. I stood, or maybe I was lifted, and I walked toward him. Each step bent the world. Time warped, space cracked. I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere beneath, back in room 207, but wrong, tighter, colder, walls pulsing, air thick, a crushing pressure on my skull. My thoughts, fracturing. Who was I? Number not yet, not now. I had to hold on, but it was already unraveling. These weren't just memories. This was the reboot, and I wasn't the first. You've been here, Evan, he said again. You've always been here. You were part of the plan. His shape loomed again, rising like smoke. I raised my arms to push him back, but they moved like underwater limbs. You were chosen. You're one of the few who must go through it. We couldn't let you go. You were needed. I turned and ran, the door still gone. In my mind, an image flashed, not real, but true. I had been here before. And then, his voice again, inside me. Don't think about time. I fell, and when I woke, everything was white, sterile, silent. I sat at a metal table. Before me, a yellowed piece of paper, old, fragile, typed at the top. Subject 34C, Evan Cross, failure protocol. Below, lines of data I couldn't decipher. Numbers, symbols, a diagram, a schedule, a map. Then I felt it, not saw, felt. Another presence? In the corner, a figure stood, barely visible, hidden in the shadows, watching. A new voice, calm, measured, not familiar, not alien either. You must remember. That was it. No threat, no demand, just a fact. A command coded in truth. And suddenly I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the entry point. The moment where you understand the true horror. Not that you don't know where you are, but that you don't know who you are. My life wasn't a life. It was a project. It was a dark room, the same sterile white light, humming faintly above. I was back, again, at the same table. Everything exactly as before. But this time I knew. I wouldn't be leaving. Not like before. Somewhere inside I had accepted it. I wasn't just in an experiment. I was the experiment. And every path I took led back here. This maze wasn't meant to be escaped. It was designed to be lived over and over again. I shoved the paper off the table. More pages beneath it. Torn, charred at the edges. Like someone had tried to destroy the evidence, but hadn't finished the job. Control system activated. Protocol number, Dreisifurter. Pause, waiting for reboot. Subject unable to restore consciousness. Intervention required. And below that, a smear of ink, a half-erased sentence. But something about it triggered an image, a hallway, a face I couldn't name, a moment, familiar but too distant to grasp. Then, clang, metal, from outside, precise, methodical, as if something or someone was adjusting instruments. They were near, watching, measuring. I stood, compelled not by fear but necessity. There was a cupboard in the corner. I hadn't noticed it before. Locked. I searched the desk, my fingers grazing a small metal key hidden beneath the edge. I slid it into the lock. Click. The cupboard creaked open. Inside, a single item, a black laptop. Minimal branding. No dust. It didn't belong here, which meant it did. I connected it to my phone, some part of me remembering how. The screen lit up instantly. Welcome, subject 34C. Please log in. I didn't hesitate. I typed my phone number. The interface flickered. Then, forbidden records. Something inside me knew. This was what I came for. I clicked. Files appeared, fragmented, incomplete, but enough. Entry 1, 1997. System deactivated. Protocol 34C activated. Subject reboot initiated. Entry 2, Subject 34C failed memory test. Memory deletion, stage 3, entry 3. Recovery system failed. Intervention required. Additional data on subject needed. Cross Evan. Failure protocol in process. External source connection required. Each line twisted something deeper in me. These were about me. I hadn't just forgotten. I had been erased. Over and over again. And then I found it. The final file. The one I hadn't dared hope existed. If 34C has passed this stage, proceed to the new life phase. Protocol completed. Life begins with a new memory. Hannah Smith was not a victim. She knew about this. She was here before, just like you. The screen blurred. My vision blurred. Too much. Too much to process. Hannah wasn't a casualty. She was a witness, maybe even a guide. And I was never real. Not fully. I was a construct, a test, a repetition, a rebooted mind. They had taken me apart and put me back together too many times. They had failed, or maybe this was success. I stood, pushed away from the table, rushed to the door. I had to move. I had to break the cycle. I yanked the handle. The hallway, again. Same flickering light, same white noise in my ears. And behind me, the laptop, the records, the loop. But now I understood. I wasn't just Subject 34C. I wasn't a test. I was the consciousness they were trying to erase. And I had just woken up. I stood. The door was in front of me again. But I didn't reach for it. I already knew. It wouldn't open. This world, this reality was shrinking. Not like a dream, but like a cage. And I was no longer holding the key. This wasn't just memory loss. It was systematic erasure. Hannah, the voice, the room. They had reduced me to a fragment, a repeating line of corrupted code. And now I knew. If I didn't break this loop, I would never learn the truth. The laptop glowed with a dull blue hum. Forbidden records. All of it. Every reboot, every scream, every moment of forgotten terror, captured like surveillance footage in some clinical archive. I scrolled, again and again, looking for anything. A door, a fault in the loop. Forbidden. Protocol 34C, new cycle. Await further instructions. Time. It was all about time. Not passing, but resetting. I remembered her, her name, her words. You'll return. You'll be here again. But why? My temples throbbed. My thoughts frayed like old wires. Memories surged, then vanished, like they were programmed to self-destruct. I stood gripping the table for balance. The room rippled. The walls, they were breathing again, getting closer. And then, her voice, Hannah, soft, inside me. You're not alone. You never were. It wasn't comfort. It was a trigger, a door to something I couldn't yet see. And then, another voice, not hers, his. The man in the black cloak. He stepped forward like he'd always been there. No face, just presence. You won't escape. Your memories are our game. You've been here before, and you will begin again. His words carved into me. They were code, not conversation. I tried to scream. Nothing. Tried to run. Legs frozen. You were chosen. Your fear, your pain. That's all we need. We consume your mind, over and over again. His shadow swallowed the light. And then, for a breath, I saw it. This wasn't just my memory. It was a shared memory. Collective. We had all been here. Test subjects. Ghosts of ourselves, rewritten 1,000 times. We were part of the plan. A network of minds trapped in simulation. Bound to repeat. My strength slipped away. My body dropped. Darkness opened its mouth, and the cycle restarted. A new reboot, a new silence, a new forgetting. I didn't wake. Not in the way I remembered waking. The walls were shapeless, just layers of darkness, a corridor of silence, a walk through nothing. But I could feel them. They were watching, not eyes, something deeper. Everything around me felt familiar, yet unbearably alien. And then, "You won't return, Evan." The voice cracked across my thoughts like lightning. I'd heard it before, always just before I forgot. My body wouldn't move. Was I standing, sitting, floating? I didn't know. My hands were cold, frozen. I couldn't tell where I ended and the room began. Fragments flickered. Faces. Flickers of movement. People I once loved. People I'd hurt. No names. No certainty, just shadows. Then, her, Hannah. Her image surfaced like breath through ice. She wasn't just part of this. She was the hinge, the quiet key in a machine of noise. You were with her. You were part of this game. You're not alone. The voice in my head, hers, mine, I didn't know anymore. This place was beyond reality, or beneath it. No walls, no floors, just constructs. I moved somehow and reached a wall. Glass smooth. I pressed. It shifted. A soft click. A seam. The wall cracked open like a new skin peeling. Behind it, not another room. A maze. A maze I knew. Corridors of memory. Shapes made of thought. Echoes that walked beside me. Just out of sight. I had been here. I had walked this way, many times. Too many. You will never find the way out, Evan. You've already forgotten that you're here, every time. The voice twisted like smoke in my brain. It didn't mock. It knew. Every memory I thought I owned was an illusion. I was a loop, a ripple in a code I couldn't rewrite. And still, I walked deeper into the maze. Another corridor, another loop. And again, I found it. The room, the laptop, the screen blinked alive as I entered. It welcomed me like a cruel friend. I didn't need to touch anything. The records resumed on their own. Your memory has been erased. You've been reset. You are part of the process. You cannot escape. This is your path. The figure appeared again. The man in the black cloak. His voice, final, authoritative. You must go through this. You were made for oblivion. My fist clenched. My mind frayed. I felt memories crawl back, disjointed, feral. Too many to hold, not enough to build truth. Then, another voice, quieter, familiar. You must remember how you got here. It was her, Hannah again, software guiding. I wanted to believe her voice wasn't just another program. I searched, desperate. The table, the corner, a note, partially hidden. I grabbed it, opened it. 34C, initialization of a new reality, memory reset, protocol complete, system setup. More text appeared on the screen. Cross Evan, you have been reset. Protocol 34C activated. Await further intervention. I staggered. The room vibrated. The air thickened. The light dimmed into grayscale. But then I understood. I wasn't just inside the program. I was born of it, shaped by it, released into a loop that fed itself. I was the result, the endpoint. And now, I was being prepared for something else. I looked at the laptop one last time. The exit wasn't a door. It wasn't a corridor. It wasn't even real. It was my mind, and I could not leave. Because I never had, just darkness again, waiting for the next reboot. When I awoke, I realized I hadn't returned. Not to the reality I knew, not to any place I remembered. This was something else, a long, dim hall, walls veined with glowing lines, like neural pathways, pulsing faintly, as if the space itself was alive, watching, breathing, holding me in its grasp. I wasn't alone. I couldn't see who or what was near me, but I felt it, a presence standing just beside my thoughts, woven into the static hum of my brain. A crack ran through the center of my consciousness. Not pain, but absence. Something fundamental had been taken from me. Something I once was, and I could never get it back. You can't go back, the voice came again. Not from the room, from inside. That same distant voice I'd heard through every layer of this descent. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was past fear. You must make a choice. You must decide what comes next. This is the end, or the beginning. I didn't respond. The words swam through me like ink in water. I tried to move, but something beneath thought resisted. Was it fear? It was recognition. I had been made for this, dragged through these cycles, scripted into this theater of collapse. Every breath, every broken memory, every reboot had brought me here, to this moment, to a choice. And I saw it then, not a door, not a machine, a screen, suspended in the air like a hallucination made real. 3 lines appeared, pulsing faintly in monochrome. The final choice: 1. Leave everything as it is. 2. Destroy yourself. 3. Erase your memory forever. I stared. 1. Leave everything as it is. The loop, the prison, the repetition of agony, of forgetting and waking and screaming inside a body that wasn't mine anymore. To choose this would be surrender, to become the program. 2. Destroy yourself. An end. A clean break. No reboot. No Hannah. No self. But what would happen to the others? To the fragments of lives I had seen flashing through me like borrowed ghosts? Would they vanish too? 3. Erase your memory forever. A strange hope. A final silence. Not death. Not loop. Something else. A blank slate. A beginning born from true forgetting. But also, who would I become? Would I even be me? My thoughts blurred. The pressure behind my eyes grew unbearable. The air itself trembled. And then, I chose. The third option: erase my memory forever. I reached forward, hand trembling, and pressed the key. At first, nothing. Then, everything vanished. Light, sound, thought, gone. I fell into a black silence. No sensation, no memory, no self, just absence. The process had begun. Bits of memory crumbled. Images dissolved. Names broke apart into dust. Even Hannah, her face faded like a photograph left in rain. And just before everything was gone, just before the last thread unraveled, "You're not alone. You will return again." Her voice, the last thing I would ever know, the final echo. Then, I vanished. I opened my eyes, but there was nothing, only empty space. Black, still, infinite. It felt like drifting inside the void between stars, but colder, more hollow. No planets, no points of reference, no sense of anything. Just the silent ache of being. At first there was nothing to feel. No body, no thoughts, no time, no shape. But slowly, something stirred. A pulse, a tremor of awareness. I was returning to something. Images flickered at the edge of my mind. Ghosts, shadows, nothing concrete, everything foreign. And then, I understood. I was here again. But where was here? No sound, no floor beneath me, no sky above, only the sensation of existing, an idea of presence, as if the universe had shrunk into a single breath, and I was inhaling it. I tried to move, but there was no movement, not in the way I remembered. There was only motion without body, a drift of thought through a space I couldn't name. The space began to close around me, not to trap me, but to embrace me, as if it knew I was there, as if it had always known. And then I remembered. I chose to disappear. I erased my memory. I severed the thread. But I was still here. Why? And then she appeared, a shape in the black, blurred at first, then clearer, defined by recognition, not light. Hannah. She didn't move in the traditional sense, but somehow she came closer. Her presence reached into me, into the part of me I thought I had destroyed. "You're back." Her voice wasn't sound. It was a sensation, like her words were printed directly onto my consciousness. Why? The word escaped me. It wasn't a question I formed. It just was. "You've always been here. You've always been part of this program. You couldn't leave." No anger, no sorrow, just inevitability. Her words landed like falling ash. Software final. Something twisted in my chest. Not pain, but understanding. I hadn't escaped. I had only recycled. "You were rebooted. This isn't the first time. You knew this, Evan. You're needed. You're part of the process." I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout. But I had no voice to raise. Only thought. Only fading questions. Who was I to her? Who was she to me? "Your choice mattered, but you couldn't leave. Everything you did was to forget." Her words coiled around me. I wanted to step forward, to touch her, to demand truth. But I couldn't. She wasn't just standing there. She was woven into the space, into me. You don't have to be afraid. We're all part of the system. You, me, everyone. We're links in a chain that cannot be broken. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of the machine. You've already chosen, Evan. You chose this path. You cannot leave. You must accept that you will always return. I felt it, my erased memories crawling back like insects. Uninvited but inevitable. I saw flickers. Her face, the room, the screen, the maze. It wasn't a place. It was me, my world, my prison. You must keep going, Evan. You must move forward. Otherwise, you will remain here forever. Her presence began to dissolve, but her echo remained. I stood again in the center of emptiness. Not alone, but not whole. I didn't know what came next, only that this was a new path, and I had already taken the first step. I stood in the emptiness, watching my thoughts dissolve into the air. One by one, silence pressed against me, not peaceful, not quiet, but watching, as if the space itself was alive, breathing, waiting for me to move. And I knew. I had reached the threshold. The step I had been avoiding for so long was now the only thing in front of me. But still, I didn't know how to take it. How do you step forward when you don't know what's ahead? Hannah's presence lingered, but she had no form, just a voice inside me. You've always been part of this world. You've always been connected to it. Her voice wasn't new. It had always been there, a signal buried beneath noise, a whisper I hadn't known how to hear until now. You can't go back, Evan. Everything you could do, you've already done. Now you must go through this and find your way. I saw her face, software fading, not a memory, but a construction, a reflection of something I needed to understand. And then she vanished. The darkness returned, thick and heavy. And then change. Not an explosion, not a blinding light, just fog rising like memory, like breath, swallowing what remained of before. I was back. The same place, the same screen, the same choice. But now I understood. This wasn't about fate. It wasn't about escape. It was the nature of existence itself. The cycle wasn't punishment. It was process. And I was part of it. The screen lit up. Black, white text, words that felt like they came from outside of reality. Stage 3. Transition complete. System ready. Time for the next step. The system, stages, processes. I didn't know what they meant, but I felt them, moving beneath the surface of everything. Then a new screen. One word. Accept. It hung in front of me like a mirror. Simple. Terrifying. Accept what? The system? My place in it? The truth that I could never escape? Fear coiled around my ribs. What if I chose wrong? Again. What if this was just another loop? Another reset? I remembered her voice. You're part of the program. You were needed. And then it clicked. I had been resisting, breaking the chain, refusing the current. But maybe the only way out was through. I reached out. Are you ready, Evan? Her voice, not a question, a confirmation. I touched the screen. The world responded. The fog lifted. The space took shape. The illusion collapsed. Or maybe reality began to form. I accepted. I didn't know what that meant. Not fully, but I felt it. Like gravity shifting. Like waking up from a lifetime of sleep. I took a step forward, and for the first time, the step felt real. I felt real. A new world unfolded ahead of me. Not an escape, a beginning. There were others. I wasn't alone. A new path, a new chance. And now I understood. The transition wasn't about leaving one place for another. It was a shift in understanding, a choice to stop running, a decision to participate, whether I would fight this system or change it or find peace within it. I didn't know yet, but I was no longer drifting. The cycle hadn't ended. It had evolved, and so had I. My path had only just begun. When I opened my eyes, I didn't see the same black void that had surrounded me before. I was somewhere else now, completely different. The fog I had felt earlier was dissipating, and I realized I was standing on a flat, solid surface. It wasn't entirely light, nor was it dark. Darkness and light mingled, creating a strange twilight in which everything appeared both blurry and sharply defined. The space was unusual, unlike anything I had ever known. It was like a labyrinth, but far more complex, far more organic. I took a step. The ground felt solid beneath my feet, yet not quite still. Each step came with a subtle sensation, as if this place were alive, alive and watching. I couldn't understand where I was. Was this the transition Hannah had spoken about? My mind spun. All the memories I had tried to erase came flooding back. Fragments, pieces, like a puzzle I couldn't quite reassemble. Ahead of me, the space opened into a vast hall. Faint light filtered down from a high ceiling where dim orbs flickered in the corners. The architecture was unfamiliar, not fully technological, not entirely natural. It was both. As if machines and nature had fused, creating something that pulsed with quiet awareness. Then I saw them, people, lined along the walls. Their faces were hidden behind masks. No two masks were the same. Each mask wore a different expression, some calm, others afraid, a few blank and unreadable. But none of them moved. They stood like statues, silently watching me. This wasn't a coincidence. This was fate. I hadn't arrived here by chance. I was part of something much greater. But what? And why? What did this role mean? Evan. I turned sharply at the sound of my name. The voice was unfamiliar, yet it carried authority. Calm but commanding. A figure emerged from the shadows. A man. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood, his form melting into the glow behind him. "You are here by design," he said, stepping closer. I blinked. The words hit something inside me. What did that mean? "You must understand. You are not just part of the program. You are the key. You are the one who can change everything." A key? To what? How could I change anything when I didn't even understand what was happening? "You were chosen. Your role is to awaken this system, and you must do it." His voice was familiar in a strange way, as though I had heard it in dreams or memories I hadn't yet unlocked. Somehow I knew his words weren't random. I was the key, but still, the key to what? "Do you want to know what happens next? Do you want to understand what this place is? What you must do?" I nodded. I had to understand. The man reached up and pulled back his hood. He was old. His face was lined with time, deep wrinkles like scars of knowledge. But his eyes, they sparkled alive and sharp, like they had seen lifetimes unfold and collapse. He felt eternal, not immortal, but part of something timeless. "You cannot grasp everything yet, Evan. You've been through too much to see clearly. But know this, you are here to awaken the system. You are part of a far more intricate design. You cannot leave it, but you can change it." The words sank deep. The system, the program. How could I change the very thing I had tried so hard to escape? "You must choose, Evan. Choose your path. You can stay and become part of this structure, or you can fight it. But know this, it will cost you. You won't be able to return to who you were. That part of you is gone." His words weren't cruel. They were true. He wasn't giving me a warning. He was giving me permission. "You chose the reset," he said, "but now you must accept the consequences of that choice. You chose oblivion. But oblivion is not the end. It is the beginning. You are no longer who you once were." I looked into his face, and in that moment I understood something I hadn't before. This place and this realm wasn't just a system, it was a world hidden from ordinary eyes, a world I belonged to now. I felt my thoughts begin to blur again, but even in the confusion, I knew this was my place. I had been brought here for a reason. Now I had to understand how to move forward. The man stepped back. He nodded. "You must choose, Evan. Now you know who you are. Now you must decide what to do with that knowledge." And I realized then, I wasn't just standing before him. I was standing before myself, before my true nature. And maybe this wasn't just a choice. Maybe it was something more. A rebirth. The man didn't vanish. He stood before me unmoving, yet his presence was heavy, undeniable. His gaze wasn't like anyone else's. It pierced through me, peeling away the illusions I had built around who I was and what I thought this world to be. He saw me. He knew what I was about to choose, maybe even before I did. He wasn't just an elder. He was part of this place, part of the system, and at the same time something beyond it. A guide, a gatekeeper, or maybe a reflection. But to understand what he represented, I had to take the first step. I sighed and looked around. The masked people were still there, silent, unmoving. Dozens of them, maybe more. Not a whisper, not a breath. Were they waiting for something? For me? Or was this some kind of trial I had yet to understand? I didn't know, but I knew this much. I couldn't remain still. If I lingered, if I stayed in indecision, I would become like them. Another cog in a system I didn't control. Another mask, another face lost in the structure. The man spoke again. You must choose, Evan. Nothing here is accidental. Your role is not a mistake. You were chosen to shift the balance. You cannot go back, but you can change everything. You are not alone. We are all here with you. His voice cut through the silence and settled deep in my mind. It didn't feel foreign. It felt like something I had always known and had somehow forgotten. His words echoed like a memory of truth. I looked again at the masked people, frozen, silent. What if I was like them? What if I had always been part of this system and never knew it? But I had tried to break free. I remembered that now. I had erased myself, tried to shed every memory, tried to dissolve into nothing. And yet, I was still here. That wasn't a mistake. That was by design. This was where I was meant to be. This was what I was meant to face, no matter the cost. How do I choose, I asked. How do I know what's right? The man stepped closer. His eyes glowed brighter now. Not with light, but with depth. They no longer mirrored my uncertainty. They reflected understanding. You are choosing now, Evan, he said. This is your awakening. This isn't just a moment. It is the end of what you were and the beginning of what you must become. If you stay, you don't just accept your role. You accept your destiny. You will open worlds that until now have been hidden from your sight. The words stirred something inside me. A memory, a feeling. I didn't know how real any of this was, but something inside me shifted. This was the turning point. I could remain a part of this world, follow its rules, disappear into it, or I could disrupt it. Awakening. The word echoed through me. Not just awareness, not just remembering, becoming. I was meant to be here, but I still had the power to change it, to change everything. The space around me trembled. The air wavered like heat rising from stone. The very fabric of this place was responding, as if my choice rippled through its core. I stepped forward, and in that moment, it happened. A door appeared, massive, steel, curved and layered. It rose from nothing, anchoring itself in the void like it had always been there, waiting for me to see it. A passage into something new, something real. Was it an exit, a beginning, or both? Are you ready? The man asked. His voice was soft, barely audible, but it rang with the weight of finality. I took another step, and the door opened. I walked through. As soon as I stepped through the door, the world around me began to shift. Reality itself seemed to ripple, tearing apart and reassembling into strange new shapes. I lost all sense of stability. No solid ground beneath me, no safe space surrounding me. Everything felt like motion. A vortex pulling me deeper, as though I were becoming part of something immense, breaking free from its own boundaries. I was falling. No, not just falling. I was descending, deeper and deeper, into an abyss I could not comprehend. This place, it resembled nothing familiar. There were no landmarks, no markers of direction, only endless darkness and streaks of murky light that spiraled around me. Each flash felt like it was trying to strip away what little calm I had left. I couldn't understand what was happening. I was moving, yet I couldn't feel my body. My arms and legs were numb. All I could do was struggle against the fall. Though each effort to regain control only intensified the sensation of being utterly lost. How long had I been falling? It wasn't time. Time didn't exist here. This felt like eternity, a state of endless descent that refused to release me. I tried to scream, but no sound came. I tried to grasp for something, but there was nothing to hold on to. I was suspended in this void, in this cosmic space, where the fall was all there was. But there was no fear, only cold calculation, a strange acceptance. At some point, the weight disappeared. I felt weightless, and in that moment, when I no longer sensed my body, I understood something. I was no longer in control. This wasn't just a fall, it was liberation. I was no longer bound to the limitations of my physical form, nor to the familiar rules of the world I had left behind. I was here, and yet I was also a part of something far greater than myself, a process. I was part of it. A presence lingered nearby. I could not see them, but I felt them. A presence, faint but undeniable. Whispers drifted through the space, and I realized that this place was not empty. It was not a void. It was a crossroads, a meeting place where worlds intersected, where reality and illusion merged into a single thread. I was at its center. "You've arrived." The voice, quiet and deep, pierced through the darkness. It wasn't just a sound. It felt like it was imprinted directly into my consciousness. Something was pulling me down now, something cold, sharp, like a tether to something vast and unknown. You did not choose the path that was offered to you. You opened the door, but that door does not lead to a simple exit. You chose the path that requires a fall. You are now part of this. The words resonated, carrying an unmistakable weight, a gravity that seemed to anchor me deeper. I couldn't understand who was speaking, who stood behind that voice, but its message sank into me, resonating in the very core of my being. You were chosen for this. You must accept it. But accept what? What was this place, and what awaited me here? This fall is not the end. It is the beginning of something you cannot yet understand. I tried to resist, tried to pull myself back, but the fall continued. I could no longer feel my body. I no longer comprehended what was happening. I was in this place, but it was changing, twisting. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And then, around me, the light grew brighter. It wasn't ordinary light. This light, it wasn't of this world. It pierced through me, through the very fabric of my being. It was light from a place that didn't belong to the earth. Not to this world, not to me. You don't understand yet, but you will. You are now part of this space. You will either fight for your existence, or you will be consumed. I felt movement again, but this time, it wasn't downward, it was upward, a return. But not back to the world I had left behind. It was a return to myself, and in that moment, the fall ended. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I felt was silence. It wasn't empty, not dead, like in an isolation chamber, but dense, full. It seemed to breathe. I was lying on my back, on a cold surface, smooth like glass. Above me, a white dome stretched upwards into an invisible infinity. Light gently spread through the space with no clear source, as if it emanated from the walls themselves. I slowly rose. My body obeyed, but my movements felt foreign. It was as if I were learning to control it again. Everything inside was heightened. Hearing, sight, touch. With each breath, I felt the air enter my lungs, passing through my entire body, filling it with something new, something unexplainable. On the floor, about a meter from me, lay an object. Simple, unremarkable, a notebook. I didn't know where it came from. It hadn't been here when I arrived. I picked it up and opened the first page. A familiar, neat handwriting. "This is your second life. Don't waste it like the first." I didn't know who had written this, but something very personal tightened inside me. It felt as though these words had been left by me, but by another version of myself, the one who knew what would come next. I looked ahead, and for the first time I saw an exit. Not a door, not a tunnel, not a portal. Just a crack in the fabric of space, like a fracture in glass from which soft blue light seeped. Within that crack I saw another world, completely different. A city, modern, alive yet unfamiliar. I saw streets, cars, silhouettes of people. Everything seemed real, tangible. And yet, I knew this wasn't the world I had come from. Something about its structure was different. It pulsed like living tissue, and I could feel how it responded to my presence. I stepped into the crack and found myself in the middle of a street. New York, but not the New York I knew. There was no familiar noise, no signal cries, no rushing. People moved silently, in unison, like an ideal symphony. None of them looked me in the eye. Each was focused on their own thing, but their movements, as if synchronized, like mechanisms working flawlessly. And then I saw her, Laura, my wife. She stood across the street, alive, real, in the same dress I last saw her in, before everything went wrong. She looked directly at me, without surprise, without fear, just as if she had been waiting. I took a step toward her. One, two, and on the third something snapped in the fabric of space, as if it couldn't withstand my decision. People began to stop. One, two, three. And then, all at once, they turned to face me. And these weren't faces. They were masks. The same ones. Faceless, with frozen smiles, eyes as hollow as pits. But now they were on every passerby. Laura was gone. Only the street remained, only the masks. They began to approach, quietly, from all four sides. I looked around. There was nowhere to run. The space began to shatter again, like glass. And in that fracture, I saw myself. Myself, in a black suit, in a mask. I stood across from myself, staring directly into my own eyes. "You've been reborn, but not cleansed," he spoke in my voice. "You still believe you can escape, but now you must make a choice again." The world began to tremble. The mask closed in. The space shattered once more. And I understood. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a new game, a new level, a new reality. But now, with me on the other side. He stood before me, I, but different. Everything about his appearance was mine, but in his eyes there was something foreign. He was calm, too calm, as if everything happening here had long been known to him. "You're looking for answers," he said, slowly approaching. "But every question you ask has already been asked. By me. By you. It doesn't matter." I took a step back. The space behind me trembled. It didn't want to let me go. "Where am I?" I asked. "What is this place?" He tilted his head as if unable to understand how anyone could not know. "It's not where, it's when. And not just one when. Everything you knew. Fragments. Distortions. You walked down a corridor, but it wasn't the only one. Here it's emerging. Here, you and other yous." He extended his hand. In his palm, a mirror appeared, right out of the air. In it, my face. But it changed. I saw myself older, younger, with a grim look, with blood on my hands, with a gun, with the frightened eyes of a child, and again, me now, with a broken heart and eyes full of rage. "This is you," he said. "All of you, the ones you could have become, the ones you became, in different versions. You think you're grieving betrayal, loss, but you haven't even realized who betrayed you." I clenched my fists. "Laura?" She was, in every version, but in each, different. Sometimes a victim, sometimes a traitor, sometimes just an illusion created to make you move forward. The world began to tremble again. My head buzzed with tension, but I couldn't stop listening. "You're in the protocol. We call it the dream. Though that name, it's for the weak. You think you live in reality, but in truth, you're trapped in a reproducible model, a cycle, an experiment. Who are we? He looked at me with pity. We are you, and those like you, those who have moved forward, those who tried to break free. But the cycle isn't that simple. It has purposes, layers, control. In each scenario, you're a figure driven by your pain. Betrayal, that's just the trigger. The masks around us froze. Their faces vanished. Only the empty outlines of people remained. What happens next? He put away the mirror, stepped closer. Next, either you refuse to understand and they reset you, or you go to the end. But remember, at the center, it's not Laura. At the center, it's you. Everything you've seen, everything you've experienced. It's a reflection of what you've truly become. At first, I thought I was dead, not in some metaphorical, poetic way. I mean, literally, dead. Because everything vanished. The space, the sounds, even the inner voice that had been trailing me for what felt like forever, suddenly went quiet. I couldn't hear my breathing. I couldn't feel my body. It was as if only my consciousness remained. And it hovered. Then I fell. Not in the physical sense. More like the sensation of flying and then abruptly hitting a cold, hard floor, the chill creeping up my spine like a snake slithering over my back. I lifted my head. In front of me stood a tower, tall like a skyscraper, but not made of glass and steel. It was made of something else, something alive, pulsing, and deep down, I knew it. This was the center. I walked toward it. I don't know how long it took. It felt like I had been walking for ages, but maybe it was only a few steps. Time was distorted here. It shimmered like air on a hot day, bending and slipping through my fingers. There were no doors. I simply walked straight through the wall and into the building. It was dark, but not in a scary way. It was more like the darkness in the womb, encompassing, pulling me in. I moved down a corridor, each second feeling like the last. The walls were smooth, but sometimes I saw flashes in them, as if hidden scenes were playing out. One moment, I saw myself in the kitchen with Laura. We were laughing. She kissed my neck. Everything was calm, simple, comfortable. The next moment, I was sitting in my car outside her office, watching her hug a stranger. Each step, another scene. Each scene, another wound. And then I reached the top. There in the center of the room was a chair, just a chair, old leather, like someone had left it behind, forgotten. In front of it was a table, and on that table a folder. No label, just initials, EM. I sat down. I opened the folder. The first page read, Protocol Dream. Subject, Evan Morton. Status, unstable. Cycle version, 27 of 27. Final attempt. The last. I felt a chill. Not physical, but deep inside. Like I was being stripped down to my core. All the layers of defense, self-deception, rage, fear, they evaporated. And there was just me. And I read. I learned that this wasn't some game, a conspiracy, or a metaphor. It was a decision. My decision. When Laura died, really, truly, ridiculously, a freak accident, a turn, no seatbelt, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't live in a world without her. So I agreed to the experiment, to dive into this model, to repeat, to search for an explanation that didn't exist. Protocol Dream. Consciousness works in loops. Give it enough room, and it will endlessly search for reasons, culprits, alternatives. And every time, it will collide with the truth. This was my 27th cycle. In cycle 13, I shot myself. In 19, I killed my Laura, who turned out to be a simulation. In 24, I ran to the mountains and went insane. And now, this was the end. He returns, but not to his home, not to his city. He comes to a place that appears only once, in every version of the world. The center of the limit. A tower of glass stretching into the sky. Inside it, the archive of everything that has happened to him. Lives, dreams, alternatives. He sees his first meeting with Laura. He sees in one version how he killed her, in another how she killed him, In a third, how they were both just figures in a simulation. At the top of the tower, a room. In it, an empty chair and a mask. He sits down. A voice, his own, speaks. Your story isn't about betrayal. It's about lies. Lies to yourself, about how you tried to forget the truth and build 1,000 false worlds, a flash. Everything merges. The silence was gone. The sound returned, monotonous, pulsing. Beep, beep. The heartbeat monitor. I could feel the pillow beneath my head, the scent of antiseptic, the rustle of hospital gowns, footsteps, someone's voice. Evan? Evan, can you hear me? I tried to move my arm, weakly, but it moved. My eyelids fluttered, then opened. A hospital room. Everything was real, and she was there. Laura. Real. Or, again? I couldn't tell. She was holding my hand, tears in her eyes. You're back, she whispered. I was so scared. Scared you wouldn't wake up. I wanted to ask, is it really you? But I held back, because I knew there was more fear in that question than a desire to know the truth. I just looked at her. How long was I there? 3 weeks. Coma. The doctors didn't know if you'd respond. You didn't speak, only sometimes whispered my name. I nodded. For the first time in a long while, I just nodded. No storms, no doubts, no scenarios. I was here. 3 days passed. I was almost fully recovered. Laura had been by my side the whole time. She only left to sleep, occasionally stepping into the hallway to speak with the doctors. And every time she returned, I caught myself wondering, what if it wasn't really her? Paranoia? The lingering effects of the cycle? Or just residual noise in my mind? I didn't know. And maybe I never would. On the 4th day, they brought me my belongings. Among them was my notebook. I didn't remember carrying it with me, but there it was, as if it had always belonged to me. The first page had familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, it means you've chosen to live again. But remember, not everything came with you. He's still here. He is you, and he won't forgive. I didn't know what it meant, but when that evening, lying in the dim hospital room, I saw a figure in the hallway, someone dressed in gray with a face hidden behind a white mask. I understood. The cycle might be over, but the echo remains. And now I had learned to hear it. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Wishing you all the best.